If you've tried your hand at playing a bit of Street Fighter 6 but are struggling with a lack of direction after graduating past basic mashing, you've come to the right place. Playing with any kind of consistency requires intentionality, as well as knowing what to prioritize, which starts with having a bare minimum basic flowchart of what to do at all stages of a round. Hopefully, by the end of this video, you'll have enough information to get that ball rolling up the Dunning-Kruger curve that is improving a Street Fighter. Let's get started. In the absence of a solid game plan, beginners always, and I mean always, resort to jumping in recklessly. It's easy to see why, considering jump-ins close down space quickly and lead to big damage on hits. In turn, the first step of your plan should always be to establish an anti-air game. You should aim to anti-air basically every jump that you see that is within range. That may sound like a lot, but honestly they are that crucial in Street Fighter. In fact, if you only take one piece of advice away from this video, it would be to anti-air everything like your life depends on it. In order to find the right anti-air for your character, hop into training and enable anti-air training, and aim to find a reliable move that covers the space in front and above you. Please refer to this artist's rendition of where you should aim to cover. If this is your character on the left here, your anti-air should hit around here. Keep in mind that just like everything else, anti-airs are spacing dependent, so if your anti-airs are regularly missing, you're probably using them in the wrong situations, such as when dealing with a cross-up jump. The fact of the matter is that your opponent doesn't care about how you want to play a ground-based neutral until you give them a reason to. The onus is on you to stop their jumping. While it's all easy to criticize your opponent for jumping too much, you gotta keep in mind that you are just as susceptible to being anti-aired. So take this as your warning to nip your jumping habit in the bud, but you are still learning to avoid having to reconcile with it at a later stage. You may find that you can get away with a lot of jumps in the early ranks, but that's only because of the relative inexperience of beginner players. Jumping is a crutch that is making you a worse player in the long term. Jumping is a macro option, and getting better at Street Fighter is all about using safer micro options like walking and dashing to maneuver around the stage. You gotta remember that the best game plans are all about mitigating needless risk, and just throwing yourself at the opponent with reckless abandon is just not worth it. So keep your feet planted. The other half of the coin to pair with your newfound dominance of the skies is to control the ground approach. You do this by utilizing pokes. Poking is kind of like fencing, where you shimmy around for space, aiming to hit your opponents from an ideal range where you minimize risk. In order to find the right pokes for your character, hop once again into training mode, and this time look for a normal that fits the following criteria. It's safe, it's not too slow, and goes at least a character distance away from you without significant forward movement. A rule of thumb for effectively using pokes is to try walking to space yourself where your poke will only hit at the absolute tip of its range. Also, try occasionally walking back just outside of cross-up range to be able to better deal with your opponent's inevitable jumps. If you manage to get these two relatively simple concepts down, then congratulations, you are successfully playing neutral. With the right application of this, you'll eventually gain an opportunity to pressure your opponent. You probably already know that you should press the advantage by mixing your opponent up with hits and throws to keep him guessing. Every now and then, however, pump the brakes to beta a reversal DP or a super. Blocking one of these gives you tons of time to punish hard, so make sure you're squeezing as much damage out of these situations as you can. Don't worry though, these punishes don't have to be insanely elaborate to be effective, it just needs to hurt. Something as simple as a heavy button into a special move will do for now. Remember, the best combos are the ones you can actually execute consistently. As you improve, you can scale up the amount of damage the combo you go for does with varying levels of resources. Just make sure you're not squandering the opening with a low damaging punish like a throw. If you combine all of these things together, you'll start feeling a much stronger sense of control over the rhythm of a match, which is obviously great. However, every great plan needs a backup in case they fail, and in this case, it would be to simply back up and slow things down when things inevitably start to snowball out of control. No game plan is perfect, and much like Arsenal bottling the league at the last stretch, disappointment is sometimes inevitable. You'll constantly come across players who refuse to be conditioned and who are giving you trouble. Recognizing that things are getting out of control is important, and having the awareness to break your opponent's rhythm can be crucial. For example, something as simple as backdashing a couple of times away from your opponent to establish breathing room and give yourself some time to consider your options can be the difference between defeat and making that all-important comeback. Breaking your opponent's autopilot is much easier said than done, but you give yourself much more of a fighting chance when you recognize that things are getting out of hand and something needs to change. Just remember to give yourself some grace if things don't work out the way you wanted. The path to improvement is a marathon after all, not a sprint. And that's it. Let's recap the basic flowchart we've laid out. Start by establishing a robust ground game of pokes and your character's ideal range to control the flow of the match. Once your opponent inevitably takes to the skies for a risky approach, use anti-airs to keep them on the ground and force them to play your game. Once the opportunity arises for pressure, press the advantage by mixing your opponent up with hits and throws, until they crack with a DP or a super, and punish them hard. Lastly, be ready to back off and reassess your approach if things aren't going to plan and start to snowball out of control. While everything here may sound reductively simple, it really is the foundation on which the best players in the world have built their playstyles on. The long and short of it all is that you just need to do less. Less buttons, less jumpings, less fireball, etc. This opens you up to play reactively rather than proactively, which is what we're aiming for. You can't get countered by a random drive impact if you're not doing anything. As you continue to improve, you should aim to layer what you learn on top of what's already established here. Street Fighter can often feel like a mental battle more so than anything, so don't get discouraged if things don't immediately go to plan. Remember, you either win or you learn. So brush yourself off, remember the basics, and get back out there. Thanks for watching. If you found any of this helpful, drop a like so YouTube throws this video at more people, and be sure to follow me on Twitter. Peace.